All right, we're live. Welcome everyone at home. I know there are some people for sure that are watching from home. It's a good day to do it. Thank you for everyone here that braved the weather, the cold. So the plan for today is we will have a little grounding exercise, and then we'll talk about something we started to get into a little bit last week. A couple of brave souls admitted that when they tried to imagine what it would be like if they knew that no matter what happened or how they messed up or whatever life presented them with, that they were basically okay. And one person said, oh, there would be nothing to worry about then. And another person said, what popped up was, oh, if nobody's watching the store, right, it's all gonna go to heck. I can't trust myself. Who's gonna make sure I do the right things or do all the hard things, right? And there's this wonderful book, and I think, if I had to get rid of all my books, this one would still be one of my top 10. It's called Be Happy by Robert Holden. And I will occasionally return to this book and just open it at random and start reading anytime I need a boost, because it's wall to wall, cover to cover, good stuff. But there's a chapter 10, which I was planning to, depending on how you guys feel about it, I was planning to read the 9 myths of happiness. So he presents this sort of theory, and I think it rings true for pretty much everyone I've ever talked to, including me, that we all have some personal conditions that we feel like must be met before we're allowed to be happy. Everyone has these. They're kind of unwritten. We're not really completely conscious of them all the time, but they're very powerfully in control of what we're allowed to do and be and feel. And we don't just have these rules about happiness. We have them about God and money and family and religion and all kinds of things. We have a whole like list of here's how life is supposed to be. And this is stuff we pick up really young. Most of it is borrowed or inherited. Before about the age of 5, our brains are kind of like little sponges. We're in this brainwave state called theta. It's almost like hypnosis. And whatever's happening around us, we take in, like what we see adults do. Oh, this is the way it is, right? That's how we learn the roles of moms and dads, husbands and wives, what a family is about, what women are supposed to be like and men are supposed to be like, and what kind of I can expect as treatment from the world, from strangers, from employers. We pick up what our relationship with work and authority is, all kinds of stuff that we might be completely unaware of. So this is just taking one little corner, which is what it means to be happy and what rules we might have around happiness. Like, I have to have X before I can be happy, and sort of dissecting it and examining it a little bit so you can see what your rules are, because happiness is actually free. It's our birthright, and it's only covered up. It's just covered up by stuff that doesn't really belong there. And we can shed some of that stuff sometimes and really start to access joy. And a joy that doesn't come from stuff, from changing anybody or anything around us. It's all an inside job. It's all, oh, I didn't know I believed that. I didn't know that I believed I had to deserve to be happy, or I had to jump through this certain set of hoops in order to be allowed to be happy. Okay. So I have been reading this fabulous book called Tiny Beautiful Things by the woman who, have you guys seen or heard that movie, Wild?
Mm-hmm. The Reese Witherspoon?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so she hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, like 1,100 miles alone. so it's on the West Coast. And then that was made from the book she wrote about her experience. And she has a novel also, but somewhere in there she also was an anonymous advice columnist named Dear Sugar. And the book Tiny Beautiful Things is a collection of letters that she selected for inclusion, where she writes back and gives advice to people. And it's kind of funny, you know, she uses a lot of profanity, but there's something very spiritual in the way that she addresses people, and the tone and she's very truthful and also very supportive and very compassionate. And I don't know, it's very compelling. I read the whole book in 4 days or something. I think I couldn't put it down. And in the very end, as I was finishing it up today, she talked about working with these kids, and she described this little exercise that they used to do with all the kids called RAIN. And I was thinking that we might try it here this evening as our grounding exercise. And so I'm totally swiping this. Thanks, Cheryl. If you ever see this, I don't know. But so she said that at the end of this, it was this thing she did in the schools with people, but at the end, all the families would get together and stand in a circle, and they would do this thing called RAIN, and they would start out being the sun. So everybody puts their arms up and they be the sun. And then as though the rain starts to come, everybody's making little popping sounds with their fingers. And then the storm gets bigger and there's like thunder. And then you go to stomping, right? And then the storm dies back to and then back to just rain. And then the sun, right? So we're starting in this really calm place and then going to this really intense place, and we're using our bodies to do it. That's why I'm attracted to this exercise. So no one ever has to do anything in here. You don't have to participate in everything we do in here. But I'm curious to try it out with you guys if you're curious, because it sounds like it's pretty amazing. On the last day of it was like a 10-week thing she was doing with these families, she said the kids were so into it that they just kept repeating it until everybody they were finally pooped. But I think this has a significance on multiple levels, right? Getting to feel our bodies, to feel when things start to get more intense, and then feel the fading and coming back to this calmer state, but really feeling it, using this movement in order to help ourselves feel and notice. That's the pattern of life, right? We have the calm, the sun, and then we go through the storm, and then we're back to sunshine. But lots of times we're so caught up in the sun and the worst part of the storm, we don't even notice that there's this transition happening. There's a flow there. And also that even though we go to storm, it's always returning to sun, right? It's something we can not just count on storms, we can also count on the sun. Okay? So if you guys want to, if you don't want to, I'll do it all by myself.
Yep. So content where you're at.
Oh, this will warm us up. Are you guys getting warm?
Yeah. Decided to spoil myself. Yeah, I didn't want to leave it on.
So I did a really speedy version there, but so we're really going to feel into all the parts. Okay, so feel the sun come out. Right, imagine the blue sky. Right, sun streaming down, and then the cloud comes in. You see the little shadow there. Right, and then you have the little bits of rain that start to come down. And maybe there's more rain. And then some thunder starts to come in. All right, and then some big booms. Feel the big thunder booms. Okay, and then it comes back to, you know, random popping. You can hear it starting to fade into the distance. And then back to rain. And then see that ray of sun start to come through. And feel the sunshine coming back through. The rain is gone. Really feel the sun. Feel your feet planted on the ground. Feel the ground supporting you. It always meets you. Notice how the ground always meets you. And then just rest. Thank you.
That would be adorable to watch a bunch of 5-year-olds do that.
This was teenagers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and their families. So there were probably a few 5-year-olds. And just notice what your body's feeling like right now. Just see if you can notice anything that feels warm or satisfying or energizing about having gone through that rise in movement, rise in energy, and then falling back into feeling ground and calm. And you might take a quick little survey. What percent of you feels here or present right now? There's no wrong answer. Just noticing what percent present you feel. Noticing your contact points, your pressure points with the chair. And the ground supporting your legs through your feet. Yeah. And then just rest. And if anybody wants to share anything that they noticed or ask any questions about that, have some space right here for that. Okay. So I'm going to pass around a little handout just so you guys can follow along with the parts as I go through in the book. And I always feel self-conscious about, I don't want to bore you guys by reading to you. So if you ever feel like it's a drag, please tell me. I try to read not monotone and boring. And Robert Holden's stuff is just so fabulous. He's one of the people that I just like paraphrasing him or trying to reduce his stuff just feels pointless. So I just want to share it. And I highly recommend this book to anyone, for anyone. So it starts with a little story. This chapter 10, The Happiness Contract. It is the night before Christmas. Little Alex, 5¼ years old, is super excited at the prospect of getting a brand new bicycle on Christmas Day. Daddy, do you really think Santa Claus will bring me a bike? Asked Alex. That depends, says Daddy. On what? Asks Alex. On whether you have been a good boy this year. Alex looks thoughtful. Taking a big gulp, he asks, how good did I have to be? Well, to get a brand new bike, you would really have to deserve it, says Daddy. Oh, says Alex. Later that night, just before bedtime, Alex sits beside the nativity scene, an antique family heirloom, perfectly preserved and beautifully displayed by Alex's mother. All the main characters are there, beautiful porcelain figures of Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus, three wise men, and also a plastic figure of Buzz Lightyear, after much lobbying from Alex. Alex clasps his hands together, bows his head, and begins to pray. Dear God, I didn't realize I had to deserve the bike. Santa Claus never told me. Alex takes a very big breath and prays most earnestly. I promise to be very good and to be completely perfect for a whole year if you can persuade Santa Claus to give me the bike. Please do your best. I know you have contacts. Amen. Alex leaves the nativity scene, but something is troubling him. He turns back. The thought of having to be good and perfect for a whole year feels like an awful lot of pressure. Surely 365 continuous days of good behavior is too much to ask of any young boy. Alex sits down again by the nativity scene and begins to pray. Dear God, I so want the bike, and I promise in return to be really good for a whole month, starting from now. Amen. Little Alex remains seated by the nativity scene. He should be feeling hopeful and excited about getting a bike in the morning, but he can't help but feel the strain of having to be good for a whole 30 days, including weekends. It feels so exhausting and so unfair. Alex looks around the room to make sure his parents are out of sight. No one is watching him. With a heavy sigh, he picks up the porcelain figure of baby Jesus. He wraps baby Jesus up in some newspaper and puts him in his pocket. Then Alex begins to pray again. Dear God, if you want to see your son again, make sure I get the bloody bike. The story of little Alex is a perfect introduction to a session I present called How to Be So Happy You Almost Feel Guilty, but Not Quite. This session is an inquiry into your private beliefs about happiness. It helps you to clarify what you really believe about happiness. It addresses your hopes and your cynicism, your positive self-belief, and your lack of self-worth. This session is an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and to restore your faith in yourself and in unconditional happiness. When I coach individuals and groups on the psychology of happiness, I refer to something I call the happiness contract. In truth, the happiness contract is just a metaphor, but its effects on your life and your levels of happiness can feel very real. Your happiness contract exists beneath a pile of thoughts at the back of your mind next to a heap of other contracts, such as the love contract, the abundance contract, the God contract, and the good fortune contract, and also the success contract, which he covers in his book, Success Intelligence. Your happiness contract is a statement of belief that determines, according to you, how much happiness is possible and how much happiness is too good to be true. Your happiness contract also asserts every condition, rule, and law that you absolutely must abide by in order to be eligible for any amount of happiness. Any happiness that you experience without first fulfilling these conditions is strictly illegal and may result in personal penalties of guilty feelings, inner discomfort, and moral foreboding. Your happiness contract is a personal agreement drawn up by your superego and signed by your ego. The superego is the part of the ego mind that tries to play God by constantly telling you what it thinks you need to do in order to be happy. It's the lawmaker that sets up the conditions for happiness based on who you think you are and what your ego thinks happiness is. I think the superego is best characterized as a blind high court judge who has never seen your beauty, your wholeness, and the truth of who you are. Your happiness contract is different from everyone else's, except on one count. Every happiness contract has a central clause in it that states happiness must be deserved. From an early age, just like little Alex, every ego adopts the belief that happiness must be, ought to be, and should be deserved. This belief has led to centuries of misidentification and misperceptions about what true happiness is. It has also caused generations of unnecessary pain, suffering, and struggle. The truth is, you do not deserve happiness. Happiness is a non-deserving issue. You do not deserve happiness because happiness is free. There are no conditions. When you finally let yourself feel the truth of this statement, you will no longer feel guilty about being happy. Until that time, your happiness contract will continue to limit and deprive you of the happiness that belongs to your unconditioned self. When it comes to happiness, your ego is trying to strike a deal for you to purchase something that is already yours. Believe it or not, happiness cannot be bought because it has no cost. It is a divine freebie. The first step to experiencing more unconditional happiness is to remember that your happiness contract is not real. This contract is not authored by God. It is written by your superego, which knows nothing of the laws of heaven. None of the laws of happiness you believe in exist anywhere in the universe except inside your own mind. The second step to enjoying more unconditional happiness is to remember that you can rewrite your happiness contract at any time. You can even tear it up altogether. Below, I've summarized 9 common personal laws that are often found in the small print of a person's happiness contract. In each case, I outline the governing belief behind the law and also the effects that this personal law may have on your life. I also suggest a possible rewrite. As you read the rest of this chapter, notice which of the personal laws you believe in and be willing to rewrite your happiness contract. Simply looking at your beliefs helps replace superstition with truth and lets old fears make way for innocent joy. And I have pens right here if anybody wants to scribble anything as they go along. So the first one is perfectionism. And I have to say that as a therapist, I've never seen anything wreck happiness or wreck people's lives or relationships the way perfectionism can. Truly, it is truly destructive. So the superego belief is, I must be perfect in order to deserve happiness. If you've written this personal law into your happiness contract, then not only do you have to be good to deserve happiness, you have to be extra good. Happiness is entirely permissible as long as you dress nice, speak well, make no mistakes, are a model citizen, take responsibility, think no evil, and never read pornography. The deal is that X amount of good behavior buys you X amount of happiness points, a bit like earning gold stars at school. Perfectionism as a true spiritual path shows you how to see your own perfection and to celebrate the perfection of creation. Perfectionism in the hands of the superego, however, is just an extreme form of personal bullying. Okay? This is the difference between vision, which is to look without judgment, and perception, to look through the eyes of judgment. Unfortunately, it's very rare to meet happy perfectionists, mostly because their self-judgment never lets them relax. So the rewrite: remind yourself often that you are the author of your happiness contract, not God. As such, you can rewrite it at any time without incurring divine displeasure. Remember also that the goal of your life is not to make a perfect self. It is to see that you are perfectly made. When you look at yourself without judgment, you rediscover your unconditioned self. A happy affirmation for you would be, I accept and love my unconditioned self. Number 2 is martyrdom. I must sacrifice good things for happiness. Let's see. He's talking about, I'll just read it. In the spring of 1997, we held a course at one of the colleges of Oxford University. Our second workshop, which featured the happiness contract, took place the day before the start of Lent, a time of prayer, fasting, and sacrifice for Christians in preparation for Easter. Geraldine, a committed Christian, shared with the group how guilty she felt about being happy and doing nice things for herself, especially during Lent. I invited Geraldine to explore whether it was really true that sacrifice must always be about letting go of good things. Geraldine eventually decided that her sacrifice for Lent that year would be to let go of guilt. Sacrifice as a true spiritual path is about giving up fear for love, guilt for joy, attack for peace, resentment for forgiveness, separation for oneness, and the ego for God. Sacrifice according to your superego is less easy to understand. The superego deal is that you sacrifice happiness and other good things so as to be happy-ish. The underlying superego fears that happiness is selfish. Therefore, a chief condition of your happiness contract must be that personal happiness is acceptable only after you've made sure that everyone else is happy first. So the rewrite. Remind yourself who's the author of your happiness contract. Think in terms of positive sacrifice and be willing to give up what is unreal for what is true. If you really want to dispel the belief that sacrificing your happiness makes everyone else happier, make a list of all the people who are truly grateful for your self-sacrifice. This list should take you all of 2 seconds to complete. A happy affirmation for you to investigate is, my happiness is my gift to the world. So the next one, earnestness. And I want to say that all 9 of these, even though they have different flavors, they still at their core all have this common condition of needing to deserve, right? It's not already here. I'm not already okay. I need to do something. I can't just be, right? I'm not okay as I am. In order to be happy, in order to rest, in order to be at peace, there's some condition that I have to meet. So the earning, if you have any major work ethic clauses in your happiness contract, you will feel a constant internal pressure to do before you can be happy. Doing precedes being and having, according to the work ethic. Thus, happiness is experienced as a byproduct of effort. The more effort you put in, the more happiness you deserve, and the more happiness you make for yourself. Thus, the work ethic defines happiness as an accomplishment. Happiness is not natural. It is a paycheck you earn for putting in the hours first. It's the dividend you receive for completing your to-do list. I have this one, right? I can only relax if the whole house is clean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have I heard that in my own head and from other people, right? And we can put anything in that blank. After I, right, thin enough, nice enough, whatever, after I've tamed whatever all the things I think are wrong with me, then it will be okay, right? And I might think it's possible to do all those things, but still happiness is at the end of that list. And have you ever actually gotten to the end of that list and then allowed yourself to really feel the peace, really feel the happiness? Right? In general, we can come up with another list like that as soon as we get to the end. There's more. Right? So it's a prison of our own making. And we want to question whether happiness is really unavailable before we finish the to-do list or whatever the hoop is that we think we got to jump through, right? After I get the promotion, after I make X amount of money, after, doesn't matter what it is, after my kids are out of the house or through college or, right? It doesn't matter what it is. Right? When I retire, right, then I'll be happy. Right? And do you think it comes? Right? More retirement is just more time to be unhappy. Unless you know how, unless you know that happiness does not come automatically after retirement, that it isn't something earned. Okay. And he says, the joy of work is deeply fulfilling, whereas working to earn happiness leaves you feeling empty. To rewrite this one, you remind yourself often that happiness is not something to achieve, it's something you accept. And when you choose to be happy first and to be before you do anything, all your actions will be graced with a new level of inspiration and creativity. A happy affirmation for you is, happiness is the purpose of my life. Oh, there's this good thing he says. So if it's unchecked, if this one goes unchecked, it can lead to workaholism. And it also can delay happiness indefinitely because the work is never done. In other words, you end up being too busy to be happy. And I tell people this story about, when I had, in previous days, when I had more of the obsession about the clean house, and it would infuriate me to see my husband not as compelled as I was to get it all done the way that I'm expending all this energy, and why isn't he helping? And finally one day he said to me, when I said, how can you just sit there when there's this list? And he said, here's how I see it. It's never gonna be done. Housework, yard work is never going to be done. So I have to pace myself. And I was kind of dumbstruck. And I realized that he was right. That I was killing myself. I was slowly killing myself by trying to make sure that it all got done. And it was an imaginary thing. It was all in my head. I made it up. It's never done. Housework is never done. Okay, so the next one, suffering. I must suffer in order to know happiness. So that one kind of goes along with the work one. Depends on how much work is, some people have a lot of work that's painful or that they really dislike. And so they might decide that, that's it, all kind of blends together. There's like a suffering tax on happiness. Sometimes we can have religious beliefs that are tied up with that. In addition, I want to remind everyone that even though the word God is used in here, that if your belief system doesn't incorporate a God or any kind of spiritual being, just substitute whatever your system is for whatever that is. Everybody has a way that they understand how the world works and how things are put together and what gives it meaning. And so the word God is just think of it as a blanket term to cover that, whatever your spiritual orientation is. So in the suffering category, he says, the story goes that there was once a man who suffered diligently all his life so as to buy a single moment of pure happiness. One day he packed up all of his suffering into a big, heavy bag, slung it over his shoulder, and headed to market. When he tried to trade in his suffering, he was told there was no exchange rate between suffering and happiness. The superego's mistake is that it believes suffering can buy happiness. It also peddles the belief that suffering can clear away unworthiness. In truth, happiness and true self-worth is experienced when you outgrow your need to suffer. And in that Cheryl Strayed book, Tiny Beautiful Things, there's one advice that she gives some person who's like beating themselves up and can't forgive themselves. And she says, so, if you keep beating yourself up or loathing yourself, does that really make you a good person? That framing of it was just brilliant, right? It seems like the motivation is there, but when you look at it on its face, how does punishing ourselves or beating ourselves up make us a better person. It doesn't really change anything, right? We still are whatever we are. Okay, mastery. So sometimes people have stuff wrapped up in achieving some kind of level of spiritual development, that's how we get happy, enlightenment. And there are plenty of good books out there that are just waiting to set you up, to help you think that there's this one gleaming light out there, achievable goal, where if you just meditate enough or om enough or chant or whatever you do, that you'll achieve enlightenment or nirvana, and then suddenly, oh, it's all bliss from there on out, right? No strife, no yucky, you don't have to get down the mud with the regular humans anymore, right? Smooth sailing, right? But it's not true. You know, our spiritual paths are very, very important for helping to ground us, and it can reduce our misery to a great extent. When we realize the nature of our being, right, that we're not these puny, vulnerable little bodies, right, that we associate with, or all the things we've done, or all the things that we think are missing. We're none of those things. We're actually this thing that is presence, spirit, space, right? I can't show it to you. I just know it's looking out of my eyes at you and looking out of your eyes back at me, right? Awareness, pure awareness. They can't find that. They can't cut us open and find, oh, there's that thing that makes a human being walk around and know its name and know other people, right? We know what parts of our brains do, but we don't know what animates being, right? The mystery of life that is us, right? That is what we are. And when we come to terms with that, that's when we can start to notice, oh, wow, that part, that awareness that's looking, it doesn't care. It doesn't care what kind of clothes people are wearing. It doesn't care whether they're fat or skinny or mean or nice or, right, dirty or clean. It doesn't care. It doesn't care. That part of it that's just looking, it values life without exception. Right? There are no conditions. No conditions. So number 6 is approval. And I know this is a really common one. How many people have had an argument, or somebody's not happy with them, or found out somebody doesn't like them, and then they can't relax, right? Can't rest, can't sleep, can't be okay until, right? Not okay for me to be okay unless everybody else is okay, right? Yeah, I get it. So what he has to say about this: how much happiness can you handle before you start to worry that it's not okay to be this happy? Most of us can handle some occasional happiness, some snippets of pleasure, and some sweet moments of joy. A bubble bath, for instance, with lots of bubbles is okay as long as it is okay with everyone else too. The real difficulty is knowing what to do with the happiness that lasts for, say, 2 days in a row. The problem is that too much happiness evokes too much worry about the possible dire consequences of staying happy, and then the happiness appears to disappear, right? It appears to. If you find it difficult to trust that happiness is okay, you will probably look for approval from 2 main sources. One is from other people, such as partner, parents, friends, kids, colleagues, and everyone else you know. To compensate for this, you may make it your duty to ensure that everyone else is happy first. The second is approval from your superego. This is difficult, however, because happiness serves as a pink slip for your superego. When you're happy, the superego has nothing to do. Too much happiness literally does your superego out of a job. Too much happiness causes superegos to have panic attacks. The rewrite: it's impossible to trust that happiness is okay if you will not trust that you are worthy of happiness. For as long as you believe you must deserve it, you will look for guarantees, warranties, and seals of approval for even small amounts of happiness, and you won't find them. The truth is, however, that happiness is okay because your unconditioned self, that's your true self, that part of you that you can't show anyone, is happy. A happy affirmation for you to believe in is, my happiness is my gift to everyone. So we have 3 more, and I'm just going to really briefly go through so we can have a little break. So control, I must be in control. And I mean, here, this is another really common one. The commands of superego's control conceal a hidden desire to control happiness itself. Once again, this is a response to the fear that happiness is not deserved and therefore it can be lost. It's good to remind yourself that in truth, happiness cannot be controlled. It can only be let loose. Ultimately, the key to more happiness is not more control, it's more surrender. And you might notice this at the end of the meditation when you ask the question, what happens when I allow everything to be as it is? That peace arrives, quiet arrives, right? So it's paradoxical. When we stop doing anything, we actually get to touch into peace. Whereas in our waking, right, our walking around state, we think that our happiness is dependent on controlling and manipulating our circumstances. And we are fed by the media at every turn this idea that we need to do this. You can't just trust life, right? You got to make it happen. Just do it. Right? So 8 is independence. I must be completely independent, self-sufficient. Strength is associated with independence. This I love this. He says the superego worships the vertical pronoun I. It makes constant declarations of independence because it believes that independence is the key to freedom and the key to protecting your happiness. Unfortunately, it doesn't know when to stop, and too much independence leads to increased feelings of separation, fear, defensiveness, and unhappiness. This one, I think, is best explored by Malcolm Gladwell in his book, Outliers. Have you heard of that? So he's a social science researcher, and he talks about this sort of myth of greatness, all these great figures in our society, you know, Bill Gates and Abraham Lincoln and all the people that we sort of put on this pedestal and like they've done these wonderful things. And in truth, these people have gotten to the places where they are through lots of support from their environment and lots of other people. Did you know? I didn't know until very recently, Thomas Edison, he wasn't a lone guy inventing the light bulb in his basement. He had a whole team of people he hired to crank out inventions under his name. Right? Nobody, none of us does it alone. We can't. It is impossible. We are by nature dependent beings. We're mammals. We don't do well alone. We just don't. We don't survive in the wild on our own, and we don't survive in civilization on our own. We need each other. We do. So 9 is goodness. So there's Alex's dilemma. Notice how you feel when you repeat out loud the mantra, I must be good, I must be good, I must be good, for 1 full minute. Can you feel the pressure, the strain, and the exhaustion that little Alex felt in the story? Does repeating I must be good make you want to rebel? Now add a few more ego messages like I must be nice, I must be calm, I must be kind, I must be centered, I must keep myself on even keel at all times. If you believed any of this, you would be forgiven for thinking that happiness is not worth the trouble. The problem with a superego message like I must be good is that it takes all the fun out of wanting to be good. Instead of choosing to be good, you have to be good. Furthermore, if you must be good in order to be happy, You're likely to try to be agreeable at all times, never rock the boat, be a peacemaker, repress your feelings, say yes when you mean no, give your power away, and avoid conflict. You do all this to find happiness, but what actually happens is a great big disappearing act, and you are now nowhere to be found. The rewrite? Superego is trying to make your ego adopt essential qualities like goodness and kindness that already belong to your unconditioned self. Your ego does not need to deserve happiness because your original self is already happy. Your goal, therefore, is to let the grace of your unconditioned self flow through you and bless your ego, bless your psychology, and bless your life. A wonderful happiness affirmation to try is I accept myself and I accept happiness. So I encourage all of you to give this happiness contract idea a closer look, because it could be even that there are some things in your contract that once they're made conscious or come to the surface, you're like, I don't believe that. That's bullshit. Right? So then you don't have to keep abiding by that part of the contract anymore. What a relief. And he talks about this thing, unconditional happiness or uncaused joy. And before I encountered this book and before I engaged in my spiritual search and my meditation practice, I had no idea what that meant. That just did not make sense to me. I could not understand. How can you have joy from nothing, that comes from nothing? But in fact, I did get to discover it. I did get to experience it. I get to continue to experience it. And I also get to continue to experience the bubbling up to the surface of the beliefs that aren't actually true. Like, oh, there's another one. Pitch that one, right? Another thing that I didn't know I believed that's totally false and that I don't have to live by anymore. And neither do you. You don't have to live by anything that you discover is not true for you. So happy questioning and searching. And I welcome any inquiry that you might want assistance with. You're always free to email me and ask me any questions you have or any roadblocks you encounter as you try to explore this idea. Okay. Happiness, I know it's a really vague term, but it actually, whatever that means to you, whatever happiness means to you, it's already here. You don't have to do anything to deserve it, achieve it, prepare you don't have to prepare in any way. It's already here. It's just a mistake that we made thinking, right? We learned. That's what we learned. You don't get to have it unless you deserve it. Right? Better be good for goodness sake. All right. We'll take a break, and then when you guys come back, we'll have guided meditation. Is this one okay?
Mhm.
There we go. All right. So just let yourself start to drop in. Feel yourself inside your skin. Notice the sensation of sitting in the chair and the places your body makes contact with the chair. And notice the ground meeting your feet and holding them up. And then let your attention start to rise to meet the top of your head. And remembering that your only job during this entire meditation is just to notice. That's all. You're just noticing. And I'll start the timer. Just noticing any sensations that might be there at the top of the head. There could be tingling or tension, coolness or warmth. It doesn't really matter what you're aware of there at the top of your head. You're just noticing. Trying to be friendly with whatever's there. And when you think you have a sense of the top of your head, let your attention start to move down and notice your face. Just letting yourself notice perhaps any areas of tension or anything at all that seems to be occurring in the area of your face. Sometimes there's tension around the eyes, the jaw, and you could experiment with letting your eyes sink back into their sockets, or with letting your tongue go completely limp in the bottom of your mouth. And then just notice what that seems to do to the muscles in your face, to the tension that might be there. Again, remembering that you're just noticing, and it's possible to get caught up in trying to do something. So as soon as you remember, you just let go back into noticing, and it's fine. And then gently prepare to let your attention shift and move around to the sides of your head and notice whatever you find there. And whatever sensations you find there, see if you can be friendly. If there's any tension there, you could imagine letting your ears drop slightly and see what that seems to do. What seems to happen. Can you let yourself enjoy or take in any relief that comes? Or can you be there with whatever discomfort or anything else that might be there? And preparing yourself once again to shift your attention, gently moving around to the back of your head and neck. Just letting yourself notice whatever might be occurring in the back of head, back of neck. And you can notice any kinds of thoughts that move through and just let them move through. Coming back over and over to, oh, I'm just noticing. Whether there's tension or something comfortable, just noticing what's there. Being as friendly with your human body as you can. And as you feel ready, go ahead and prepare to shift your attention to begin noticing shoulders and arms, starting at the sides of your neck, letting your attention run down, roll down your shoulders, kind of like water rolling over, and pausing to notice shoulder joints, and rolling your attention like water down the tops of your arms, and pausing at your elbows, rolling down forearms, and pausing to notice your wrists and hands as you scan all the way to the tips of your fingers. Being as friendly as you can with whatever you find, whether there is tension in some places or tingling, coolness or warmth, vibration or space. Whatever seems to be there in this moment, not taking it too seriously, just noticing this is what seems to be here. And then gently preparing to shift your attention again, leaving whatever sensations you found there in your arms and shoulders and hands, right there where you found them. Let your awareness shift to noticing the center of your body, starting at the top with the throat, scanning down the chest, heart area, and then noticing diaphragm and space between chest and belly. And then noticing belly. And then all the way into your abdomen, pelvic floor. Feeling how all of those muscles and bones in your hips support you in your chair right now. And then scanning down the back side of your body, noticing your upper back. And then the middle of your back. And your lower back. All the way down to your bottom seated in the chair. And just noticing these areas that naturally seem to carry tension around the shoulders or behind the shoulder blades or in the front of the body. Tightness in throat or chest or belly. Can you release any of those areas, whatever might be happening? Or can you just explore whatever seems uncomfortable in those areas? Maybe even experimenting with breathing in and out of an uncomfortable spot. Maintaining your curiosity as much as you can. Which is challenging sometimes. We have habits of going into oh no mode when we experience some discomfort. We're just seeing what is it like to just come from this neutral place of noticing, accepting, allowing. And if that's difficult, then you can ask, what if it were allowed? What if this pain were allowed? Or this discomfort? Or this restlessness? Or this sleepiness? What if this were allowed? Nothing is left out. And then gently preparing yourself to shift attention, to scan your legs. And you can start where you're seated in the chair, scanning the backs of your legs from your bottom to your knees, and the top sides of your legs, from your hips to your knees. Just noticing those things that are commonly found: tingling, vibration, coolness, warmth, feelings of space or flow or tension. And pausing to notice your knees, and then scanning your shins or fronts of your lower legs, and then the calves or backs of your lower legs, until your attention meets the floor. After scanning ankles and heels, and then letting your attention roll across your feet all the way to the tips of your toes. And then letting yourself notice first left leg, all the way from where it's attached to your pelvis, to the tips of your toes. And then right leg, where it's attached to your pelvis. And then all the way to the tips of your toes. And then seeing if you can feel both legs simultaneously. And then preparing to shift your attention again, letting awareness rise up to meet the place where you notice breathing happening. And that may be different today than it was the last time you checked. So you're just noticing what seems to be true right now in this moment. Noticing rising and falling of chest or belly, the rhythm of the sound of breathing or the sensation. Sensations of air, movement at the nose or throat. And you might pause for a moment to notice the space at the end of your out breath. There's a natural pause in your breath before you begin to inhale the next breath. And you're just noticing that space. And ever so gently, as you notice that space at the end of your exhale, see if you can allow into your awareness other things that are happening in the space of the present moment. You might notice sounds either inside the room or coming from outside the room. Temperature, the feeling of your clothing or ground beneath your feet, or thoughts seem to be moving through, or states or emotions, boredom, restlessness, sleepiness. Seeing if you can allow yourself to notice anything at all that seems to be happening in the present moment. Even if that is thought, even if what you notice is thought, you don't have to get caught up in what the thoughts are thinking. You just notice that there might also be thought. So your rule is just noticing what's here now. Right? What is actually happening right here, right now. We spend so much time in past or future that we might forget how to stay here now. And you can introduce this question as an experiment to help. If you like, you can ask, what happens if I allow everything to be as it is in this moment? What if I let go of the controller, the one who thinks this is supposed to be going a certain way? What if I even let go of the meditator who's trying to meditate well? What happens if there's no effort? There's just noticing what's here now, no matter what that seems to be, without judgment about what should be here now or shouldn't. liking or not liking how it's going. Everything is allowed. What if everything is allowed? Just for this short time. Your experiment to see what happens. Nothing left out. And you can introduce that question as often as you need to. You can induce deeper and deeper levels of letting go just by repeating the question. Am I truly allowing everything to be as it is in this moment? Or simply repeatedly asking, what would that be like if I relinquished control, or if that part of me was in the back seat in this moment? There was no need to control anything in this moment. What would that be like? What would the experience of that be? And then you just notice, after you ask the question, you just notice what seems to happen. As we reach the last 2 minutes of this meditation, you might want to let yourself savor or explore just a little bit more of this allowing everything to be. Noticing what the experience of it is. Savoring the lack of effort or the silence. Or the peace. And just noticing that you didn't make anything happen. Simply allowed yourself to experience what it was like to stop. And as you feel ready, you can start to send some energy into your arms and legs. Take a deeper breath. Offer some gentle movement to your fingers and toes. And letting yourself have as much time as you need. Thank you all for coming on this chilly night. It's nice to be with you. Namaste.